I'm delighted to say joining us for the Claret Blue View with me, Will Pugh, is Tom Rennie, broadcaster, journalist extraordinaire, West Ham fan of the highest order indeed. Now, Tom, I almost in exactly verbatim fashion introduced Mark Webster of Talk Sport Infamy a week or two ago to the We Are West Ham podcast. It is an equal pleasure to have you joining us for the first time ever on the show. I would argue, though, Tom, that Mark is almost on the scale of what it is to be a West Ham fan. I would argue that Mark is probably at the polar opposite end to you. He has a very mercurial, philosophical view on the world. And I've been having to think about this, really looking forward to having you on the podcast. And I thought, right, the introduction is a big, important part to hook people in. Yep. And I thought the best way I can describe not only my relationship with you, but and you'll obviously have a chance to put me wrong here, but following you on Twitter, right? I'm going to boil you down to your existence on Twitter is like I would describe a roller coaster. Like any good roller coaster, there are some exhilarating bits, there are some bits you really don't like, but on the whole, it's a net positive experience, and you keep going on them again. I am a roller coaster fan, which is why I still follow you on Twitter and enjoy lots of your engagements. Have I done you a ghastly injustice there, or is that one of the fairest summaries of yourself you've ever heard?
Well, firstly, I want to say what an honor it is to follow Mark Webster on the program. One of my all-time favorite people, full stop. Just an incredible individual and human being who I've done loads of shows with over the years, and I just love him. So I'm delighted to be following him on the program. I mean, look, Mark is a positive man. He is a very positive, glass half full individual, and I'm not a glass half full person. Look, I love the club. I love the club more than anything, really. Don't tell my wife, but it's true. And you know, they are my life obsession. But I'm not, I mean, this is why Prague was so amazing for me, right? I was there, as many of your kind of viewers and listeners were, and it was so unexpected. It was so unexpected because even in a dream that I had the night before in my hotel in Prague, I still didn't think we were going to win. Even at 1-0 up, I still didn't think we were going to win. Even at 2-1 up in additional time, I didn't think we were going to win. So when we won, I couldn't process it. I'm not sure I've processed it now, what happened.
Same,
so it's a great description. And I think that I'm a realist West Ham fan, which I'm not sure, I don't know. I'm not sure it melds with the younger generation of fans. I think I meld a lot with the older generation of fans who just in the end are like, screw it, we're going to lose, but let's try and enjoy it.
Yeah, quite. Would it be? Because look, I'm the exact same as you, by the way. I'll do my very best not to make this the Mark Webster hour, but exactly how you described it, Mark is a wonderful, wonderful human being, and I so wish, as I'm sure many people do, that I could just take a dose of Mark Webster, inject it into myself, and it would be somewhat a calmer existence. He's so philosophical about the world. Everything doesn't really matter because, you know, he just looks holistically at stuff, including football. It doesn't seem to, it's almost like it doesn't bother him for weeks on end if West Ham lose a match.
Yeah, I mean, he did the show with Adrian Clark a few years ago on TalkSport 2, and I hope he comes back at some point. It was great, and as well as our show as well, to be fair. But and he called Adrian like the Reverend, and I thought, no, you're like a Shaolin monk. What are you talking about? Like, Adrian is not the religious figure here. You are, because I was doing shows with Mark when David Moyes came back, or when he got the job the first time, one or the other, I forget now. And I remember, I mean, I've come full circle, then back again, then forward again on David Moyes over the years, as most people have. But he was very much of the case, and it was after Bilic, I think. And he was like, well, I would rather have kept Bilic than done this. And I was like, what are you talking about? Bilic had to go. It was over. You could see behind his eyes it was over. You go to press conferences, watch the games. I think the Liverpool game was his last game where we got mullered by Liverpool and they was all in that terrible orange kit. And it was like, this is gone. And he doesn't know what to do now. And we see it all the time with managers. And Mark was just like, nope, I liked him. He's a great guy. He played guitar. He smoked. We should keep him. This is the kind of person I want to be our manager. And I'll go to the National League with him if it means we keep him. And I didn't agree. I didn't agree then, and I don't agree now, but it was great to listen to nonetheless.
Quite. Look, Tom, if ever I was going to devote a section of an interview or a chat with a guest to David Moyes, it is with Thomas Rennie, broadcaster, West Ham fan extraordinaire, because I mean, like I say, you will notice throughout this, I will refer back a lot of the time to your Twitter presence. And I imagine that, and most people listen, if they don't follow you already, at Thomas J. Rennie, do it. I'm sure they do, but if they don't, get over there. And look, I will get on to Moyes in a little bit more detail. One thing that I think always makes me laugh without fail, even though I know it's coming, and it extracts a variety of different responses for me, is your tweets. You're a regular match-going fan. I like to differentiate that when we speak to people. And often, without fail, there's a photo of the stadium, whichever stadium it might be, home or away. Why am I putting myself through this again? Regardless of West Ham's current form, points total, league position, round of whichever cup we happen to be in that you're about to watch, why am I doing this to myself again? Sometimes I laugh and I go, oh, good old Tom, good, that's great banter, that makes me smile. Sometimes I go, we're second in the league. This is a final of a European competition. What on earth are you doing? It's enjoyable. West Ham are good. Enjoy it. And Tommy, just talk me through. We'll get onto your sort of West Ham journey a bit generally, but what is that feeling? Do you ever go to a West Ham game full, or A, looking forward to it, B, thinking we might win, C, well, I don't know if there is a C. I suppose A and B first off.
I mean, that's a massive question. There's so many avenues to go down with that question. Firstly, I think David Moyes is the greatest West Ham manager of our lifetime. I think possibly in the pantheon of West Ham managers, he goes up there with Ron Greenwood and John Lyall, and then David Moyes. I think that's the top three. And I'm not old enough for Ron Greenwood, though I did very much enjoy his book, Yours Sincerely, which I'd recommend to everyone. It's where we get the quote about the West Ham way from. It's a terrific book. And John Lyall, I'm just slightly too young for it. So I know of, but not about those managers. And you and me, similar-ish age. And we've had some real schlock during our lifetime. I liked Allardyce. I know that's controversial. I liked it, not because the football was great, because he wanted to win. And as much as Spurs fans, are enjoying the old Postecoglou thing, and lots of us enjoyed the Redknapp thing, some of those days under Harry, some were amazing, some were real awful, because it was like no one had a meeting about who we're playing today. And just, that's just not who I am, So I love David Moyes, and I love some of the football. I understand absolutely some of the negatives around it. And I do think that, I don't apologise for a second, in that from November last season, and then January through March, I think any other club in the country would have sacked him. And I think if we weren't in the Conference League, he would have been sacked because it had gone. The players weren't doing what he wanted. The whole trying to play football with Mark Warburton, it was bizarre. I couldn't work out what was going on. Declan Rice, final year at the club, was being totally wasted. He'd clearly never seen Lucas Paqueta play. Like a total mess, right? But he found a way out of it. And I think generationally, we're not used to seeing managers do that. And I think taking... Mark Webster, holistically, across his 4 odd years at the club, he's had 3.5 of the most incredible years I've ever experienced. So, I remain Team David Moyes, and I think the start of this season shows that he's gone back to what he knows how to do, how to win games. I think when we play teams like Luton, it's going to be a struggle because I don't think he plays that way, and he'll keep trying to draw them on. But, I think I had a 4-month spell where I thought he should have gone. I had a 4-month spell where I even, probably through panic, would have accepted Sean Dyche as our manager, which, is a horrible thought now, but we all panicked in January. I don't apologise for my own personal panic for what was going on. I wanted to win that cup so bad that I would have done anything to make sure we won it, right? So if you're not in a relegation battle with 5 games to go, you can focus on beating Alkmaar and Fiorentina, which eventually happened. So, there's that. But I think he should stay. I'm glad he stayed. And I'm glad he seems to have worked out what was going on. In terms of positivity, I mean, something happens to me, and I think most people watching West Ham, is that, I can't go to most Saturday games because I'm working, but because we've had so many European games recently, I've been able to go to so many, which is amazing. And I've been able to get to away games, which is it's just such a great experience. And look, it's not always with the away fans. If I can get in with the away fans, I will do. But often I'm in a kind of press room and keep my head down and not celebrating goals too wildly, mainly because we don't score any. Mind you, I did celebrate the Lanzini goal at Palace last December, which was just unbelievable. Incredible goal. One of the best goals I've seen for years that we've scored. But look, I just think that I get so into it, right? I'm so absorbed in this game. And, I was having this conversation with Brian Dunsteth on our podcast, Week in the Tackle, a few weeks ago about his kids who are like 11, 8 and 7, quite young. And he was like, all of his kids support players. They're fans of Robert Lewandowski, and they get Robert Lewandowski shirts. And when he goes from one country, one team to another, that's who they support. And they feel similar to Lionel Messi now who's out in America. And I don't get it. I don't get it. I don't understand it. I don't criticize them for it. They're in another country as well, which I think helps their kind of position. But that's not me. I would rather West Ham won a game than England won the World Cup. I would rather West Ham scored a goal than, than my vasectomy failed and I had a third kid against my will. I just want us to be good and the positive to be and West Ham won. I'll take anything in the world as long as it ends with and West Ham won. And I think maybe I'm not in that I want to play well and lose group, which puts me at odds with, a lot of West Ham fans from a certain era. I want to win. And now we've won. I got that taste of it. I want to win again. And I want to win again. And I want to win again. And when we don't, it doesn't ruin my weekend like it used to because there's so many games and I think we're getting older. But it certainly ruins the hour afterwards. The hour afterwards, I don't apologize for my general fury about the whole thing, but I'm able to move on now as opposed to when I used to have a season ticket when I was younger. I mean, I'd still be annoyed about it on Tuesday,
Yeah. It was. I remember I'd sort of equal parts look forward to and dread Tottenham games when I was a bit younger because it would be like 2 weeks. If we won, I'd be in the best mood ever for a fortnight. And then if the other way, I was ghastly to be around. And I don't think that's an overly healthy way to to exist. You know what? It's funny, as you mentioned, players who you'd love and would you support elsewhere. I must admit, my now sole reason for owning a Boca Juniors shirt is because Carlos Tevez played for and then went on to play for Boca Juniors again. Paolo Di Canio, I had having read his autobiography when I was young, developed an affinity with Lazio because he liked them and I really liked Paolo Di Canio. But I mean, I
wish him well. Good luck in all your endeavours. But I mean, if you win or lose now, it doesn't bother me. How did we get on?
Yeah, quite. No, it's interesting to sort of hear you speak about it actually, because I mean, I will draw a line at the Sam Allardyce sort of. I've always drawn a line there. That was my most scarring of periods of time, having a West Ham season ticket. Had that for a very long time. And
the championship season was pretty good, though. That was pretty good. And the playoff final was incredible.
But would you rather, it was incredible. Yeah, that is correct. But we were winning that season. It was pretty ugly, but we were winning. So, I found he came up short when we come up. I know he had that good season first, and we come 10th, was it? And then he just seemed to settle to his level. Then felt he was a victim of his own success.
Yeah, I mean, he had a level.
That's
absolutely right. He had a level. And he achieved that level, which was 12th in the Premier League. Yeah. And you don't get higher than 12th in the Premier League doing what he did. And I think David Moyes is significantly better than Sam Allardyce. But I think that there was a point of having Allardyce compared to the managers before him where I thought we've got a professional here. We've got someone who is in control. I mean, Gianfranco Zola, when he was in charge, you got the feeling that he couldn't organize breakfast for the group. He would just sort of turn up in the morning and say tomatoes, and then he would think tomatoes appeared. Like he's just one of those guys, lovable and all that.
And then go and be better than everyone at football.
And all that, he gets on the training pitch and he's better than me. Stop training, Franco. You're making everyone feel bad. You're making Matt Taylor feel bad. Stop doing this. Whoever it was.
Carlton Cole's feeling sad about his football inability.
Carlton can't shoot straight. Stop doing kick-ups on your head. Stop it. Yeah.
Yeah, quite. Look, what do you make of? I will get onto sort of a little more of the form and some of the semantics. But what's your West Ham journey? Like where are you where do you hail from? Have you always been a match going fan? Was it a hereditary condition like mine, where your dad passed on? Or your parents passed on the West Ham supporting disease or ailment or whatever it might be.
Yeah, I mean,
what's your journey?
So we're from Hornchurch. I went to Sanders Draper in Hornchurch. I'm now in Gidea Park. So I've been in the area most of my life, apart from a few years in Brighton, a few years away around the kind of university party days. But yeah, I mean, my first game was 1993, West Ham Coventry, 3-2. Bobby Gould just got sacked at Coventry. Theo Neal was in charge. Tim Breaker scored for us.
Tim Breaker, nice.
Tim Breaker scored the winner and signed my programme after the game. On his way down through the old West Ham, which I've still got somewhere in my dad's loft.
Underrated right back, Tim Breaker.
Tim Breaker right back, yeah. Him on the right, yeah. Keithy Rowland on the left before Dixie came back. There's Alvin and I think it was Steve Potts. I think Gale was still there, but it was Steve Potts. Peter Butler, Bishop, Trevor Morley. I think Matty Rush might have played on the right. Yeah, Matty Holmes on the left, if I remember right. And the other striker, I'm not sure it was Chapman. We didn't have Chapman then, I don't think. Might have been Lee Chapman, might have been Steve Jones. But either way, that was and then Ludo, right? So broadly, that was the team. And, you know, I had no choice, like most people. Like, I'm fathered in, not grandfathered in. My granddad came from Glasgow, so they were all Glasgow Rangers fans. They moved to London in like 60s, 50s. So my dad's from the Heartlands. Technically these days, so am I, with the Heartlands moving more Essex ways. And yeah, I had a season ticket from the age of about 8 until about 18. But when I'd moved to Brighton, trying to come back was very difficult. Plus, we had these season tickets that I then share with a couple of people. My dad would take his friend or he'd take me in the old East Stand on the corner near the away fans. And I worked out at one point, I came back to see us play Sunderland. I'd seen us not win in 27 visits. And I just said to my dad, I really can't keep doing this. Like, it takes my weekend away. You know, I'm 17, 18. I'm usually massively hungover. It's a huge journey to come. And it is just really bumming me out. So I just, you know, I love it and that, but I'm taking a break. And I didn't go again. Well, I went to a smattering, but I didn't go from 18 till about 25, something like that. I went a couple of times a season, but I got a job working at LBC and I was working the weekends, and then we were sort of relegated. So I went to the midweeks, you know, whatever, but just sort of were doing other things. And then I got the job at Talk Sport as their international editor, like about 10 years ago. And then I could sort of get into games. And so as part of the job, you can go to games. So I started going more, but I don't really, I buy tickets. So if I want to have a drink, I'll buy a ticket. And if I'm meeting my dad and his friends in the Cow, I'll buy a ticket. I go to all the European games, the midweek games, but yeah. So now to be fair, last 3 seasons I've gone to like 20. Before that, I'd been to like 20 in 5 years, and now I've been to like 60 in 3 years because midweek and Sunday is perfect for me. So yeah, I'm probably more of a fan now than at any point I've been since I was like 16, which is weird because I'm old now.
That's true, Tom. That's true. Look, Declan Rice. I don't know. It's an odd one, isn't it? Because I think leading up to it appeared to be the most good-natured, friendly of all transfers that there could possibly be in the build-up. And I think everyone, most fans, even the louder, shoutier, I'm just doing this for social media attention fans, were, you know what, finding it impossible to hate or find a negative feeling towards Declan Rice. Then it was like, oh, it's Arsenal. Then a bit of that crept in. Then he went there. And then within mere moments of him saying, I feel so at home. I never knew football could be played this way. This has opened my eyes. You know, what was I doing before playing at that Sunday league outfit? Effectively, it was what it felt like. All of a sudden, it's like, actually, I wanted you to go on and be one of the best defenders in the world. I sort of want Arsenal to go down with you in the team now.
Yeah. I mean, look, to be fair to Declan Rice, you don't get married to the new wife and in your speech at the wedding say how much you love the old wife, right? You just... You don't do it. You would never do it. It's an insane thing to do. Of course he went to a new club and said they're the best. Of course he said the football was incredible. Of course he did. He'd have been dumb to keep talking about us. So I don't mind that so much. You know, he has moved on. We got a huge amount of money for it. And I got to give him, I mean, you know, people hate Sullivan and I get it. I'm not like the world's biggest fan or anything. But he said to all and sundry, I'm getting 100 million. And he got it. He bloody got it. So, you know, kudos to Sullivan for doing it. And for how they've spent it as well, chaotic though it may have been, he's done a good job for the club with this asset that he sold. I mean, with Declan Rice, a bit painful for me specifically because I was working in America when he's made his debut for Arsenal at the MLS All-Stars game. And like everyone, because I've made a bit of a thing on Sirius XMFC about like, you know, Declan Rice, you know, everyone's asking me about Declan Rice for a year. Everyone's winding me up about it. And he then makes his debut in front of me and people were just like, Tom, how do you feel, Tom? And I hadn't really been that like affected, really, like, a bit kayfabe affected, but in general, you know, it'd be fine. We knew he was going. He did a great job for us. Everyone in that Prague team is an absolute legend. A bit like to everyone in the 2006 FA Cup final team. You know, I have nothing but time for all of them. I've worked with quite a lot of them. They're all legends.
Apart from
Scaloni, who's, you know, dead to me. But then again, Carragher pressured him. Don't bring it up, all right? He pressured him. He kicked the ball out, and then he chased him. It was ungentlemanly conduct in that final.
Yeah, still shepherd it. I get it. But
sure.
Yeah, no, I'm still really not over that. Really hard watching Argentina win the World Cup with him in charge.
I know, God. And they all love him. Oh, Messi's amazing. I really wanted France to win. Anyway, so, you know, it's tough, and it was tough for me to see his debut, and I was there on Sunday week watching him be the best player on the field in the Man United game. I actually found myself being annoyed by Arsenal fans questioning how good he was. That was really annoying me because... He is, for my money, second only to Rodri in that position in the Premier League. I put him up there with the very best players in the world doing that. And look, let's be real here, right? David Moyes no longer had use for Declan Rice. Why?
Definitely.
Because Declan Rice has changed from defensive midfielder, read the game, drop into the back three under pressure, and start the counter from that low block position. He's moved on. He's Brian Robson now. He wants to be this way, that way. And what's going to happen with Arsenal, I'll tell you now, is that Kai Havertz will be binned off. They'll bring Partey back in defensive midfield and Declan Rice will go on the left-hand side because he can do everything. He is the most complete midfielder I've seen maybe ever. And we are still in the infancy of his career. You know, he can do a bit of everything. And he's not perfect at everything, but every single thing he can do. There's no weakness to that game, but there's only growth. And he wasn't going to do it here. Because I think we'd gone as far as we could with Declan Rice without becoming a different type of team. And sometimes that happens, right? So I don't feel bitterness towards him. I don't give a toss what he does. And I do think going to Arsenal is a mistake because if he wants to win the Premier League, it ain't going to happen there. If he wants to win the Champions League, they couldn't even do it with Thierry Henry, okay? So it ain't going to happen. So in my mind, Declan Rice, who, I'll just qualify it with saying I just think he's terrific. And a great personality, and I'm glad we had him. And the way he left, you know, as you say, awful, but it couldn't have been better in terms of stage management and all of that. Though it does, you know, I'm a bitter person, so I'm still bitter about it. And even I don't feel that much hatred towards him, whatever. But I think he's using Arsenal as a stepping stone. And I think in 5 years' time, he'll go to a club who can win those things 4 years' time. In 4 years, he's going to be 28, going towards the peak of his career. If he's done 4 years at Arsenal and they've won the FA Cup twice, he'd already won a cup. What he wants to win is the Champions League and the league. It's not going to happen there. So in my mind, he's using it as a stepping stone to the next club. I think he used us in that way, but he didn't do a Jermaine Defoe on us. So, you know, all the best and all that. And we'll see you when you're 35.
Yeah, that's true. I find it quite interesting, actually, the Declan Rice chat. And I genuinely think Moyes is low-key relieved to get rid of him. Like you say, we already look, Moyes is just able to revert now because he's like, it felt like he was just trying to accommodate Declan Rice's development. And I'm sort of pardon, I obviously wasn't there, but sort of heard sort of enough reasonable whisperings about the conversations that took place about Declan Rice staying on for another year at West Ham. And part of the sort of agreement pretty much was, okay, well, you let me develop the attacking side of my game. Thomas Souček became a shell of the man he once was, because the first couple of seasons where he was amazing at West Ham, posting really good goal scoring stats, were because he was that marauding forward player. People look at him because he's not very pretty and he's gangly and he's all of this, think, oh, he must be the holding midfield player.
Yeah.
But he was a class act going forward as well. I think once he was told, no, you are the disciplined holding midfield player now. And N'Golo Kante, he is not. And I honestly really, really felt that Souček was going to come into himself a bit this season. I think his game time will probably be limited. Now we've got Alvarez in, who looks like a Souček sort of +1. And James Ward-Prowse taken to it like a duck to water. And I think that will be the key to unlocking games against teams like Luton, like you mentioned. But I think David Moyes, especially with the money, is quite happy to be rid of Declan Rice. Look, Tom, this season, what does success look like for you? Obviously, last season was amazing, but I totally agree with what you say. David Moyes wouldn't be in his job, nor should he be. I certainly lean towards the Moyes-in scale and have done. It was January after we lost to Wolves was the only time that we declared on this podcast. I was like, yeah, it's time to go. And then as he seems to have done so often, David Moyes, he turns it round and finds wins and performances out of nowhere. Wins, but it was still, if he doesn't win the Conference League, he goes. He did win the Conference League. He always finds a way out. What does it look like this season? We've started the league in phenomenal fettle. We look great. I was bleak and dour before the season. We look amazing. What does a good season look like for you? What does he have to do to fulfill the potential that there is at West Ham?
Well, look, I think that the ambition for us is to re-qualify for Europe. I think that's going to be David Moyes' ambition every year. And the fact the Champions League is going to that disastrous-looking Swiss model, essentially a backdoor model, so Real Madrid have 2 more group games to make some money, it means that there's 5 Champions League spots. There's going to be 2 Europa and 1 Conference League. So 8 teams are going to qualify for European football next season from the Premier League. I think we can get above Villa. I think we can get above Brighton. I think we can get above that group of teams that we are in. And I think that there's every chance that we could re-qualify top 6, top 7, top 8. So I think that's the ambition. And I think that's more than doable for the quality of squad that we've got. And I also think the bottom half of the Premier League is probably the worst I've ever seen. I think the newly promoted teams are the worst trio of teams that have ever come up together in the Premier League. So you should be doubling all of those. And that's already 18 points before you even think about what you're doing. So I think we should be aiming for somewhere between 60 and 70 points. I think if we get 55, we're going to be 8th. If we get 60, we're going to be 6th. And moving up from there, I think the top 4 is not achievable, but you never know. I mean, they could go on a run. But I also think in terms of cup competition, knowing David Moyes, if he were to retire now, I actually think people would go cup specialist. Now, he's a European trophy specialist. Like, he's not Unai Emery, but I think you could start looking at Emery and looking at David Moyes and thinking, they know how to navigate those competitions. So I expect us to win a tough Europa League group, and I expect us to get to at least the quarterfinals of the Europa League, which I think would be a terrific achievement off the back of all the additional games we already had. I think forget the Energy Drink Cup. Try and get to the quarterfinals of the FA Cup, quarterfinals of the Europa League, re-qualify for Europe again, and once you're there, it's anyone's ball game. And I think that would be a terrific success for us. And I just think that, to your point from earlier, I think this is his team now. I think that there were issues last season that you've well articulated. And I think if you look at a midfield of Lucas Paqueta, I think he wouldn't have been that upset to see him sold, but now he's staying. It's fine. Paqueta, James Ward-Prowse, and Edson Alvarez. If you can keep Zuma and Aguirre fit, there's a balance there. I think, we've tried to replace Antonio multiple times. It ain't going to happen because it don't work without him. And I think
there must be another version of him, though. Sorry to interrupt you.
They're not trying to get it. They ain't trying to get it. If every striker they bring in is not him, so I don't understand why. Because it's
there
not
must be another version of him.
I don't know. If I had air, I'd have pulled it out already, but it ain't going to happen, right? So, and I expect Antonio to have his 5-month dip mid-season, like usual, come good again in April. But I'm really intrigued to see what Kudus can do. I don't watch other leagues, right? I watch the highlights. I talk to people who do, but who's got the time, right? I watch all the Premier League games. I watch the Championship games. That's all the time I've got. And I cut like the late stage Champions League, group stage. Don't waste my time. Don't waste my time. 36 team group. Sod off. Right? I'm not watching that.
Until we're in it.
Well, I watch it for money. And if we're in it, yeah, those are the two categories. But the people who do watch this stuff a lot, who know the leagues well, whose judgment I think is good, they tell me he's incredible. They tell me he is basically an attacking midfielder in the ilk of someone maybe like if you crossed Ødegaard and Lampard. Someone put that to me the other day. Someone who can run the game but can also ghost into the box and score the goal. Someone who can be your top scorer without being your centre forward. I hope David Moyes don't just bug him out on the left wing, but maybe he needs to adapt. You know, all this stuff about Scamacca and Allaire and all this sort of stuff, and Moyes never played to their strengths and yada, yada, yada. Adapt. Develop. You're earning £5 million this year. Maybe try and adapt to the manager who you're playing for, you know? So hopefully he can adapt and replace Benrahma, who, you know, again, legend, Prague, all that, but we're way overdue to replace Benrahma. So
thank you. Yeah. I'm glad you said that. I was going to ask you in a bit more detail. Look, Tom, you mentioned how precious your time is already. I've already kept you for a smidge longer than I said I would. But I just want to give you one opportunity. You've mentioned Benrahma. Every single little bit of me I'm using every bit of willpower I've got at the moment to not basically dump my own hatred of Said Benrahma on you and try and get you to validate that on my own podcast. But just before we let you go, we'll ask you what you got going on in a minute. But have you take this opportunity? Have you got like a West Ham take or a thing you think often? Not that you're one who doesn't, you know, shies away from putting your thoughts and feelings out to the world. Is there anything about West Ham that you look at or that you just want to say? Something, whether it's interesting, a take you don't think other people notice, or just a thing that you often think and would like to put out there, or just some final thoughts. I
mean, I have loads. I could do this all day. I mean, the reason I'm enjoying doing this podcast is because I talk about West Ham a lot, to the point my producer at SiriusXM often says, "That's enough. Now, that's enough. Okay, you've done 20 minutes on your thoughts on Thilo Kehrer. You just wrap it up. Wrap it up. No one cares. No one cares. So, but I mean, I do dislike Thilo Kehrer, I'm afraid to say. I do dislike him intensely, and I'd sell him immediately. And I got a lot of grief from accounts I had to block on social media because, like, I did a little joke about like Kehrer. I'd send him back immediately. He was signed yesterday, and like people I don't have a great deal of time for are really coming at me on whatever Twitter's called now. And I thought, I don't actually need you. It's fine. You know, it's just it's just shooting the breeze about the football, buddy. Let it go. Yeah. But and I can get quite aggressive with these people because I don't like them. So it's fine.
Yeah.
But so Thilo Kehrer, I'd sell him immediately. Said Benrahma, I mean, you can't score one goal every 10 shots. So I'm glad you're on the same. I mean, you know, I've got time for him. I don't have time for him starting 60 games a year. You know, right. But my big thing that I would put out there is that I like the Olympic Stadium. I like it. I think that there has been improvements made, and I would still make big improvements. I don't like that stupid wall that separates the away fans and the home fans in that corner, which I assume they brought in after the Austria-Vienna game when they threw that water cooler thing over, right? So fine. They had some logistical things to fix there, but get rid of it, bring the atmosphere back. And I would encourage things like the club. You know, I've seen this work at other clubs, crap though it is to say. Think about a singing section. Think about a safe standing section. Think about a section of the crowd where you actively encourage the supporters who want to sing and dance and shout and all that sort of stuff to be together. I wouldn't do an ultras thing because I think ultras culture is crap. And I certainly wouldn't do what Arsenal have done with 10 teenagers. You seen the Arsenal one? They have like,
honestly. So
they have like 20 teenagers who have a flag and a drum and they're trying to do a Homesdale Road thing. And it's like going to sixth form college. Like it's pathetic. Absolutely pathetic. Yeah. So I wouldn't do that. But I do think there is a way to get certain fans together in a safe standing section where if you stand here, you know, I don't know, we would like you to be loud, please. You know, I personally like to sit quietly in the games, right? So I wouldn't be good in that section. I shout a lot.
Which will surprise some people.
Yeah, but I shout a lot and talk a lot, but I really get into the game. And so the atmosphere for me is secondary. I really get into the match. And I'll shout a lot during games. But the whole getting into the constant chanting, it's great fun. I've obviously done it, certainly at away games, but that isn't the kind of fan I am. I like to sit and intensely watch the game and talk to people about the game around me. But there are others that don't want to do that. And let's get them together in a section where there's some real atmosphere. But the stadium itself, right, the grief it gets off other fans, right, I'm not having it. Screw them. You can't tell me that Molineux, weird Meccano set stadium, or Luton Town, basically a car park, or like, you know, Brentford's ground, which is like envisaged by AI, like just all of it. These are not like, they're not personality grounds. They're just as crap as all St Mary's and Leicester City Stadium. They're the same thing.
The Medeski.
They're the same stadium.
IKEA, flat pack stadiums.
They're flat pack stadiums. Our stadium, what a history. What a personality. Tremendous character. It's had European semi-finals there. It's had Olympic Games there. And look, I get there are faults, and I don't like the kind of weird tarpaulin bit on the media side. Fine, I get there's faults. But that big stand on the other side where you get like, 25, 30,000 people in, the two bits behind the goal, really good atmosphere. And, you know, it's a monster. We would not have been able to do this. We would not have been able to build it. We couldn't have afforded to do it. It was never going to happen. And Upton Park, God bless it, and all who sail in it, was finished because the East Stand move killed it, right? The atmosphere was generally crap. Some of the quietest games I've been to were at Upton Park when we were losing under Uncle Avram and Zola, right? Awful times. And so, you know, if they could have rebuilt the East Stand, sure, but it wasn't going to happen. So let's let that go. Remember everything pre-2000 and when was it, 5 or whenever the big stand opened. Everything before that, great. I'm into it. Everything after that was rubbish. They never finished it. This is it. So what I would like is people to love it more. What I'd like is the people to defend it more. And if you've been there at some of the games that I've been at, I went to Sevilla, like many of the people listening and watching did.
What a game.
You know, and I was in the corner. So I bought a ticket, not a media one. I was in the corner because I wanted to get smashed. I was in the corner where Yarmolenko scores the winner. And he comes over to where we are. And I'm in like the third row of that. Yeah. You can't tell me that wasn't an amazing atmosphere. You can't tell me when Antonio scored his record-breaking goal against Leicester, it wasn't an amazing atmosphere. You can't tell me the first 12 seconds against Eintracht Frankfurt wasn't an amazing atmosphere, right? I'm not having it. I'm not having it. It can be amazing. It's no better or worse than some of the other grounds that I've been to. And I think we should defend it more. I think it's an incredible thing that we're in the actual Olympic Stadium in London. And there are improvements being made all the time. There's a long way to go. But personally, I think it's the best thing we ever did, moving to that stadium, and I love it.
Oh, there we go. I mean, that, Tom Rennie, right there is why I'm delighted that I decided to introduce that question into this section for the first time this week. I will be continuing that forevermore. I didn't think you were going to go pro London Stadium. I totally agree. What I will put to you, though, I will challenge you to do this as a man whose job it is, for those who don't know. Your job is one of your jobs, several you have, I know, is picking and choosing and generally sorting out and arranging live football commentators, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So I would put it to you within your role, because I find this happens a lot, to discourage future fans of other clubs and even perhaps West Ham fans from perpetuating the trope that is, oh, the London Stadium's atmosphere is rubbish, you can't see your seats, ha, 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 that you say to all of your commentators who are commentating at the London Stadium to stop mentioning it. We know that West Ham used to play at Upton Park, and it just feels like an easy void filler for other fans and for commentators to go.
The worst one is when they say
about the atmosphere,
but when they say about the proximity, and the general point is it wasn't like that for at least a decade. So you know, if you're going back to 1983, you win that argument. You don't win it 40 years later. All right, you don't win it. So I do say it to people, but. You know, in the end, people are allowed to have their opinions. They haven't got to agree with me just because I'm right. You know, they can be as wrong as they like. It's their prerogative. You know, it's a free country still, so it's fine. And if an away fan goes there and they want to sit, you know, you go to a stadium as the away team, and of course you say everything's crap, right? Of course you do. Fine. Yeah. And
you've been to Newcastle,
Christ,
or Sunderland, or Crystal Palace.
Top row. Give me a break. Like that. By the way. Don't tell me public investment fund of Saudi Arabia. Now you own the kingdom of Newcastle United. You can't afford to move the home fans down. The only team who do it, and they say they can't afford to redo the infrastructure to put the home fans pitch side, which are required to as a Premier League regulation. They keep saying they can't do it because they can't afford it.
What's
Sorry,
that, the away fans?
are they owned by a country? No, move us down like everyone else, please. Thank you.
Is that what it is? Because you sit up in the gods at Sunderland as well, don't you?
The regulations are in the Premier League, you have to have the away fans pitch side. There's no way that we would want them where they are, or like Arsenal would want that entire section to be like you can see the away fans or blah blah blah. We used to have them in the Trevor Brook in that bottom bit, that bit that still gives me nightmares, the away fans celebrating. But you by Premier League regulation, you have to have some. I'm not sure what the percentage is because we do a bit of a half and half job.
Yeah, sure.
But some at least have to be pitch side, and Newcastle don't, and it's because they won't and can't afford to rebuild it, which was acceptable 3 years ago before they were owned by a country. And now, get us pitch side, please.
Yeah, I like the sound of that, Tom. Yeah, I feel a new campaign, a We Are West Ham podcast campaign coming on here. Look, Tom.
I don't think it'll catch on with the fan base, the seating at Newcastle United, to be honest, mate. I wouldn't run with it.
No, quite. I might have a word with some of those blokes who went viral on Twitter this week protesting outside the Saudi Arabia game at St James's Park.
God bless them. Yeah. In the end, the Saudis are a dreadful regime and we shouldn't have allowed them in. The fox in the hen house, guys, and it should be a problem. Oh, no, look, they beat Leeds, and so it's all fine.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Foxes joining all the other foxes in the weirdest hen house in the world that is the Premier League at the moment. But look, Tom, it has been an absolute pleasure to have you on the We Are West Ham podcast for the first time ever. There should not have been anyway, but any doubts or nervousness brought upon by me saying that Mark Webster was on recently, I hope have been completely banished from your mind. It's been absolutely brilliant having you on the We Are West Ham podcast. I need to think of a catchy name for that question at the end where you're allowed to just say what you like. Bit of a quicker, easier way into it than the garbling intro I gave it this time round. But to start it and kick it off with a staunch, passionate defence of London Stadium, I feel was really going to be a hallmark and a foundation for hopefully that question's future success on the Claret Blue View. It's been brilliant. What have you got going on? Where can people read, listen to, or watch what you do if they don't already?
Oh, I mean, globally, depending where you get your podcast. My podcast is called Week in the Tackle, which I do with a guy called Brian Dunseth, MLS legend. It's a bit of a US, UK, transatlantic soccer banter-a-thon. And you can find that everywhere. If you're in the USA, I'm on SiriusXM FC, their soccer channel 3 days a week, Thursday, Friday, Tuesday. And with TalkSport, I occasionally pop up on the shows that invite me. But also, if you're outside the UK, we've got we're in 20 countries doing Premier League commentary. So I always do the 5:30, whenever that is.
There you go. We've got listeners all over the world. So that's where you can get Tom. You can get him on Twitter as well, at Thomas J. Rennie, if you fancy that.
You're still saying Twitter, are you? You're not saying X? No, you're not doing it?
Oh, who's doing that? Come on.
You got to do it in the end. We're all going to fall in line in the end.
I don't think we will. I think this will be the one. This will be the line in the sand.
This is the line in the sand for us. This is it. This is where we all get a backbone, where the multi-billionaire changes the name and we're like, no, we stand up to him now. Yeah.
But you can't say things like tweeted, can you? You can't say I X'd this earlier.
You say you post, you repost, and you I don't know what the other what is the other one? Quote X. You quote X.
That's not no.
Hey, no. I didn't create this world, buddy. He went to space. What did you do? Hey?
Yeah, well, that is true. You just don't strike me as like a rule follower, Tom. You don't strike me as a man who'll fall in line so quickly.
It's all gonna move on without us. I can only change the things you can change,
Yeah. Well, I'll be here, the last bastion of freedom, still calling Twitter in 40 years' time. But look, Tom, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the Claret Blue View with Will Pugh on the We Are West Ham podcast. Thanks so much. We'll definitely get you on again later in the season. West Ham are probably not going to win a cup this year. They're probably going to finish in the top half, just about, but rest assured, Tom Rennie will be pulling his facial hair out. Do you pull out your facial hair in lieu of your head hair now?
Yes. And I slap myself in the mirror occasionally for fun.
And nothing to do with West Ham.
No. It's moving into other areas now.
Exactly. Also, what's the score going to be this weekend when we play Man City?
Oh, don't ask me that.
I forgot to do some of the normal mundane questions after your London Stadium defence.
2-0. 2-0 to them. We're no
I won't even ask you who to. Yeah.
No
Great. Look, Tom Rennie there, broadcaster extraordinaire, West Ham fan.